we have an opportunity to heal this. And now we have access to the tools in a more convenient way than humans ever have before. So good news, we can do this for our children, our children's children, our children's children's children, and 7 generations in the future. So like that is a really exciting piece of news. So if you think you're not worth it, then how about 7 generations after you? Are they worth it?
I'm Amy Woodall, and this is Conscious Habit, a show from the People Forward Network, teaching you how to incorporate love and consciousness at work, home, and the world at large. You just heard from Emily Fletcher, founder of Ziva Meditation and leading expert in meditation for extraordinary performance. This woman has taught more than 50,000 people how to meditate, including myself. And as a listener to this show, you've probably heard my shout out of Ziva before, and I am not overselling when I tell you that this technique changed my life, which is why, if I'm being honest, I was a little pee myself excited that she said she would come on to the show. In this episode, she shares her own journey of mindfulness and meditation and also breaks down the roadblocks, mental and otherwise, that stop us from investing in our health and well being. And from there, we discuss all the incredible ways that you can start healing yourself today and the positive impact that you can have on you and generations to come. But first, we start off with a little gift in the form of a short prayer aligning Emily and I for this podcast.
So let's go ahead and close the eyes. Big breath into the heart. Exhaling and softening any calluses, any shields, any fences around our heart, just letting those fall away now so we can open up our hearts to each other and to the heads and hearts and hoo-has of everyone listening, past, present, and future. Imagining 2 beautiful golden cords going down from our heart, through our root, through the bottoms of our feet, through our floor, through the crust of the earth, and connecting all the way to the molten core of the planet. Inhaling, and as you inhale, imagine that fiery, grounded energy coming up through those 2 golden cords, penetrating your feet, going up through your root, and activating, strengthening, and enlivening your heart. Again, breathing into your heart, letting the size, the frequency, and the amplitude of your heart increase. And as you exhale, soften the brow, the jaw, the lips, the heart, the belly, letting anything that is not the frequency of pure love fall away, be surrendered out of the cells. One final inhale through those 2 beautiful, strong golden cords all the way up into your heart. And this time, as you exhale, offering up the intention that we are in deep coherence with ourselves, with each other, activating our crowns, our halos above our head, letting it be an antenna, letting it be a funnel for divine inspiration, wisdom, and the ideal medicine for us and for everyone listening, so that these ideas circumnavigate the intellect, that they are not edited by fear, but rather communicated with elegance, grace, eloquence, so that this medicine meets people where they are and helps them to step into where they want to go, for ours and everyone's highest good. And so it is.
That's beautiful. You are
Mm.
tapped in. I want to start off by just giving you such sincere gratitude and love because you have been a life changer for me and therefore my family. I mean, in many ways. So, folks, if you've been listening to the podcast, I give a little plug to Ziva at the beginning of every show, and I could shout it from the rooftops because I'm like, hey, you all, I found this thing. I feel like you should know it too. It has truly made me a kinder human. I like me better. I like being with me better. My family notices when I do not meditate. They will say things like, hey, can you go in the bedroom, spend like 15 minutes and come back out a different human that we like to be around, please? They kind of say that in not so direct ways. So thank you for just, so many people have these passions, Emily, or these things they feel like they're drawn to, but they remain just that. They remain this thing that they want to do or could do or someday, but you've done it and you have changed thousands of lives. So thank you.
Amy, I am crying. My birthday was 2 days ago, and so I
Oh.
just really feel like my heart has been opening because you received so much love on your birthday,
Mhm,
and this year, as I in the past, I've turned into sort of a brat on my birthday, like a little bit of a brat, which is unusual for me. But this year, I didn't have 1 minute of brattiness, and I just really received every single message with the love that it was intended, and I let the love penetrate my heart, and I let it saturate my cells, and so I feel practiced in receiving right now, and I just wanna let you know that I really received that, and thank you for seeing me, and more importantly, thank you for taking the medicine and
mm,
continuing to take the medicine for yourself, for your family, and then ultimately for the species at large. Because, there's always going to be more suffering. There's always going to be more tragedy. And even if there wasn't tragedy, the news would invent tragedy to make it seem tragic so that we get addicted to it. And so it's tempting to like, there's so much suffering in the world. I should be suffering too.
mm,
Right. There's so much pain in the world. My pain, if I don't feel pain, then I am callous. If I am not personally mourning the loss of these elementary school children like they were my own, then I'm a bad person. What we have to see is that our suffering isn't helping anyone else's suffering.
mhm,
That actually, if you take away the circumstances and if we just look at the energetics of it, that actually the darker things become, the brighter we need the light to shine in order to maintain equilibrium on the planet. And so, for anyone who is a high achiever or a healer or has found something that is helping them, and then maybe they feel guilty about it, like they're going to out evolve their partner, or out evolve their families, or out evolve their teams, like please know that that is a lie. It is not true. And that is mediocrity trying to keep you stuck and small. And so, actually, we have an obligation and a responsibility to shine even brighter as things get more intense and darker on the planet. And so, thank you for doing that work.
ooh, you just hit on so many things that I'm like, "Oh my gosh, write it down. We gotta talk about that. We gotta talk about receiving. We gotta talk about the fear of outpacing in our own search for healing." Like, there's so much that to unpack in what you just shared there. Can we start off with
Mhm.
that? I love to hear that you were open to receiving. This is a conversation I've had to have people have with me that they're like, "Hey, you're being pretty selfish because you're only a giver and you refuse to receive." And my
Mm.
good friend Des, who I co-host our retreats with, tells a story about being in line at a post office and a woman in front of her, and Des's hands are full of packages. They're like falling over. And this woman in front of her said, "Ma'am, you can go ahead of me." And Des like, "No, no, it's okay. I'm good. I got it." And the lady's like, "No, go ahead. Go in. Your hands are full. Go in front of me." And Des like, "No, it's all right. I'm good. I've got it." And the lady said, "Ma'am, do not snatch my good deed from me. You get in front of me right now." And that was sort of Des's moment of like, me denying is actually taking. I'm being a taker when I
Yes.
refuse to receive. So, how
Oof.
beautiful that you were open on your birthday. What's been your journey of learning how to be a good receiver?
First of all, I love that. Do not snatch my good deed from me.
Mm,
That's
mhm,
really good medicine. So, my friend recently, her name is Blue. She's a genius. And she was explaining that the neurochemistry of giving and receiving are actually the same. And in her the speech, she was basically inspiring people to be more giving, right? Like inspiring, like, let's be go givers because it actually fires up the same thing as receiving. But for me, I needed it in reverse. It's like, oh, right. Like that thing that I get when I give to people, well, if I never receive, then I am robbing people of that neurochemical cocktail of them being able to give. And so I think it's a matter of like one, loving yourself. The degree to which we love ourselves is the degree to which we can love other people. And that means both giving and receiving love. And I'd say over the last, I've been meditating now twice a day, every day for 16 years. And so one of the big things that shifts is just your ability to love yourself. And I find that as I love myself more, I am more willing and able and even excited to like receive the gifts from others. I also think that meditation increases something called deserving power.
mm,
So you actually start to believe that you deserve your desires, which helps you with manifesting. It helps you with achieving, yes, but it also helps you when someone does say something nice to you. I mean, how many times has someone's like, "Gosh, you look so beautiful today." And you're like, "Oh no, I slept," blah, 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 blah." And you just like, or like, "Wow, your book is amazing, and it was so hard to write." Like, and it's like, what if you just said, "Wow, thank you," right? Like really, like open up your heart and let it land, because everyone wants to be seen and heard. Even Oprah said that every single guest she had on her show, from like from Beyonce to a 7-year-old girl, like everyone afterwards would be like, "How was that? Like, how did I do?" Because everyone wants to make sure that they were seen well and received well. And so weirdly, when we receive someone's gift, when we receive someone's compliment, it's like we're seeing them and it means that they've done a good job in giving it. Right? Of like, you know, think about like, oh, what gift would she want? Like when you're giving a gift, you want to give them something that they would delight them.
Mm.
And so if you don't receive the gift and receive the delight, then it's like the transaction doesn't get fully completed and you create like a karmic interrupt or like an energetic interrupt.
I love that, and I think for anybody listening, no matter kind of where you are, to just be reflective of like, am I good at both? Because we've there is a balance between those two things. Am I good at giving? Am I good at receiving? Energetically, I call it karmic currency. That's kind of my belief is like everything is karmic currency and, how are we either contributing to it or taking it away? And I love that example that you gave of like if somebody gives you a compliment, that's such a great baby step of learning how to be a good receiver. Is just take it. Just say thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Oh,
you for
thank you.
noticing. I appreciate that. That's one step towards healing for that. And something that really drew me to you and the work that you do at Ziva is your mission. I remember hearing your mission. I was like, I love that. I where did that come from? So can you kind of share what is the mission of Emily Fletcher and Ziva and where were you inspired by this?
So I'll share because I've had two. The company's been around now for 13 years, and we had one mission for many years, and then I recently updated it. So the mission that I think you're talking about is that like one of like my motivating factors as a human is to eradicate unnecessary suffering from the planet.
Mhm.
And I would love to talk about that. Like what does unnecessary mean? What does suffering mean? Why do we want to eradicate it? But I'll first share like our updated mission as of 2 years ago because I'm in love with it. Our mission at Ziva is to help people to get into coherence with themselves and each other so that we can live full spectrum lives, so that we can solve the big challenges that we're being faced with as a species and have a great time doing it.
Mm.
And really they're saying the same thing, like they're different ways of saying the same thing, but if you'll notice that this one is moving towards the positive, where eradicating unnecessary suffering is moving away from the negative. And I have a rule in life and when I manifest that it's like you have to move towards the dream. You have to put your attention on the thing that you want to grow. And so I realized 7 or 8 years in, a little late, but I did realize it at least, is that in our mission, we had said we want to eradicate unnecessary suffering. So here we are, like pouring water on the seeds of suffering, even inside of the mission statement. And so that's why we've reframed it like, help people get into coherence with themselves and each other so we can solve these challenges and have a great time doing it. Like simple, clear, towards the dream. But to unnecessary suffering, like what is that? I get that suffering is part of the human experience, right? It's people are going to die, people get sick, people get hurt. Like suffering is part of the human experience. And I would even argue that it's a very coveted part of the human experience. And by coveted, I mean, I think it's arrogant to think that we're the only habitable planet in all of the billions of galaxies and billions of solar systems and like the enormity of the universe, that this is the only tiny little speck of sand that has sentient life on it is just like so arrogant to me.
I agree.
But even if you're like not on the alien tip, like if you were to think about like an unmanifest being or like a soul before it incarnates or even animals, like that apparently like the human frequency and our ability to experience extraordinary range of agony to ecstasy in one day is very unique, and it's very unique to the human experience. Like, the fact that we can play all 88 keys, apparently, so they say, is a coveted feature. And that has really like, just that idea and even if it's not true, like, I like to believe that it's true, that there's, like, souls or beings or angels or aliens somewhere, something, somehow that's like, "Oh, wouldn't it be great to, like, experience full ecstasy and extreme agony in a 24-hour period?" And I think when you reframe it like that, it starts to feel less consuming. Like the suffering is like, it's not forever, it's temporary, right? And it's changed my relationship with suffering. But so I get that suffering part of the human experience. I'm not trying to eradicate that. Okay. That oftentimes is our teacher. It's part of what, fertilizes the soil. It allows us to grow new things. But unnecessary suffering, I would define this as insomnia, anxiety, depression, oftentimes inflammation, toxicity, in some cases, trauma.
Mm.
In some cases, trauma, like, these can all cause suffering unnecessarily because we have a solution to them. We have a solution to every single thing that I just mentioned. And the thing is, like, we're living in the internet age, okay? So it's like, I get that not everyone can afford every modality, and I wanna be very respectful and honest about, like, who has access to what. But, like, y'all, ChatGPT 4 just came out, okay? Like, there you can get any knowledge you want about anything in 30 seconds. How do I heal my autoimmune issue? How do I deal with my childhood trauma? Hey, what's the best method to cure insomnia? Like, literally in seconds, you can find the tools. And then in this day and age, like, the amount of time and energy that I put spending free stuff on the internet, the amount of content that I have made for free in the past 16 years of me teaching, if you were to consume every blog post, watch every video, watch every social media post, you could, like, become a full-blown enlightened master, right? Just from, like, my Instagram account. And so it's no longer a matter of, like, not having information, and sometimes not even resources, because people are putting so much stuff for free online now.
Mhm.
So point of the story is that unnecessary suffering, like stress and anxiety, when we have a solution, like meditation has been around for 6,000 years. And so then it's a question of, do you want to be suffering or not?
Mhm.
And if you are, then embrace it, then like lean into the existential kink of it. There's a great book called Existential Kink, which is basically like, look, if you know you have a problem and you're not solving it, then like you're getting off on it. Like there's a
Mhm.
piece of you that actually wants it. So then just enjoy the fact in then highlight the piece of you that's getting pleasure from the pain
Mhm.
and lean in.
It's always I mean, when you kinda have a perspective, and it's not like a, "I have a better perspective than you," it's just a, "I have a different perspective than you," like, kind of the
Yeah.
the the overall you, and there's still so many people who live life outside in rather than inside out. And, but I think there's
Mm.
this huge shift of people who are like, oh, life isn't happening to me, it's responding to me. But ultimately, there's still many people in the world, leaders leading companies. And I was just at a conference recently and having some of these conversations where people are like, I don't really believe in that stuff. I mean, I want to, like, it seems
Mhm.
nice, but I just don't really. So, when you come across those folks who are like, "Oh, what you say sounds great. It sounds like this
Mhm.
utopia world of like I can shift things and I can live in this coherence and I can be connected to other people, but I don't really believe it." What do you say to them? Or do you just say nothing?
Well, I think it does depend. Like, usually I'm pretty good at determining someone's level of what I would call worthy inquiry,
Mm,
right? And worthy inquiry is like, do they actually want to know? And then are they willing to surrender some sort of preference to get it, right? And it doesn't have to be money. Sometimes it's time. Sometimes it's giving up your wine or your social media so that you can like learn the thing. But it's like you have to allocate some amount of resources from something into something else. And so question number one is like, do they actually want to know? And question number 2 is, are they willing to allocate some level of resource from what they're currently allocating it into the thing that will provide the healing? But if there is zero worthy inquiry there, then usually, yeah, I'll give them the suffering trophy, which sounds mean. It sounds really rude, but it's not, because sometimes people really genuinely, that's what they want. They want the suffering trophy. And that looks like, wow, that sounds so hard. I don't know how you make it through the day. Here you go. Like, and I just like give them the trophy. And honestly, like I wanted the suffering. There's been many times in my life where I did not want anyone to fix it. I just wanted them to give me a suffering trophy. And one of those times was postpartum.
mm,
I was not sleeping. My body was in extreme pain. My son wasn't eating. He was sick. Like I had a sty. My stitches came out. Like it was awful.
mhm,
And I just wanted to be validated and seen in my suffering. And for like months, I was in that. And so I actually like I say it with like real reverence and respect of like, that sounds so hard. I don't know how you're making it through the day. God bless you. And like, let me know if you ever want help. Like, I'm here. Right, so there's a way to do it that's not condescending or like, "I've been meditating for 3 years, so I'm better than you,"
right.
which is like, it's tempting to be like, "I'm so enlightened, look how fancy I am." But, like, that's not truly compassionate. But then if there is some level of worthy inquiry, but there's skepticism, right? Like, then the onus is on me, right? Of like, I see the desire there, I see the interest, I see actually the need, but they are protecting themselves.
Mhm,
They're protecting themselves because they've encountered charlatans or they've encountered what I call mood makers, right? Mood makers who are making a mood about something, but actually don't understand the substance of the thing. And that's, I'd say, my sweet spot and superpower is people who have worthy inquiry but are skeptical is like what I've built a whole career on, because it's one of my superpowers is taking esoteric concepts and communicating them in a way that is both accessible and attractive to a more mainstream audience. And all mainstream means is that they haven't had access to a lot of these tools because these tools have been purposefully put under wraps by different organizations at large, either political organizations or medical organizations or religious organizations. There's very good reason why people don't want you happy, healthy, and liberated. It's because like people who are sick make industries a lot of money. People who are
Mhm.
afraid are easy to divide and control, and people who are repressed are easier to control. But like that's why this whole psychedelic revolution that's happening. I think there's a sexual revolution that is happening. There's certainly like a whole shift in consciousness that is happening. And so it's going to be really interesting to see what systems have to come into place to try to control people that will be harder to control. And it's going to be like pop some popcorn because it's going to get interesting.
It's fascinating to watch how quickly it seems like it's escalating of people who are like, "There's gotta be a better way," and what does that look like?
Yeah.
And leaning into this idea of being more conscious, I felt like, "Hey, this is a really damn good time to start the podcast Conscious Habit," because I think people are leaning into in many facets, and it is happening in companies, which I love seeing because if we can have this in organizations from the top down, the ripple effect that it can have of good on the planet, it can happen pretty damn fast. So
Yeah.
in that suffering piece, and I think there's buckets of suffering like you've talked about. There's sort of like personal suffering of like, I believe every thought that I have, and therefore I'm kind of living in this space of suffering of anxiousness or depression, those types of things. There's the bucket of suffering that we're seeing within our nation of just like the division and the people dying and like legislation that's coming through that makes us very uncomfortable. There's those buckets of suffering. There's the buckets of like worldwide and I mean, so there's all of these buckets. I want to focus in on that personal us living with us every single day. And I love the shift of the mission from unnecessary suffering to that full connection. I love the leaning into the dream piece of it. If I'm somebody who's like, hey, I like this conversation, I want to learn how to minimize the suffering and lean more towards that feeling good, feeling connected. What do I do? What are the first places that I can start?
Well, every hammer finds a nail, and every meditation teacher will say you got to start with meditation. But here's why. And now you don't have to start with meditation. Plenty of people start conscious eating, or some people start with exercise. Like there's a lot of on ramps onto the consciousness evolution ride. But meditation is a really good one to start with because it becomes this foundational habit that actually is defragging your computer. It's defragging your brain computer or like your nervous system hard drive, which allows all of the other software that you want to install to be so much easier to install. Like it's very hard to run like the fanciest Mac OS, Snow Leopard or whatever the new OS operating system is.
Mhm,
It's hard to run that on a PC from 1995.
mhm.
And that's honestly what most people are trying to do. We've got so much information coming at us, now, especially with AI, that's about to do this exponential leap of information that is available to us. And yet our hard drives can't handle it. Our brains actually cannot ingest or receive all of this beautiful, powerful information and software because our nervous systems are fried with stress, overwhelm, depression, insomnia, anxiety, and burnout, honestly. And so, if we don't handle that, if we don't start to defrag the brain computer, then this onslaught of information that is coming is actually going to exacerbate the suffering and make it harder to create progress. So, if you start with meditation, then what we're doing is that we're de exciting the nervous system. Okay. When you de excite something, you create order. When you create order in your body, then the lifetime of stresses that we've all been accumulated can start to come up and out. Like nature did not intend for us to be sick, tired, and slow all the time. Like nature's not mean. I think that would be mean. Nature wants us to be fast and healthy and vibrant and alive. And yet, when we don't live in accordance with nature, that's when we get stressed. That's when things start to slow down. So the body's trying to find the exit, but we're running around in fight or flight, and the whole nervous system is excited, and all the molecules are moving very quickly. It's hard for that stress to leave the body. Then, once we do learn to meditate and we give the body rest that is 5 times deeper than sleep, and that's a really important point that's unique to Ziva, right? So in the Ziva technique, you are giving your body rest that is 5 times deeper than sleep. And that feels great while it's happening. It's like a supercharged power nap without the sleep hangover on the other side. But the real magic happens in that you're not just getting rid of your stress from today, but because of that deep rest, you're able to get rid of all of the accumulated stresses from your past. And that is where we see this huge leap in consciousness. That's where we see this huge leap in productivity and performance capabilities, because it was the stress that was making us stupid, sick, and slow. And once that leaves, and I'm not just talking about a state change for today, which is what mindfulness does. Okay. So most of the apps, the guided videos on YouTube, those are teaching mindfulness, which is awesome. It's great at handling your stress in the now. It's a great appetizer, but if you really want to see this like quantum jump in your performance capabilities, if you want to reverse your body age by up to 15 years, if you want to increase neuroplasticity, improve your immune function, improve sexual performance, physical sensation, fertility, like if you really want this host of like neurological and biological benefits, then we have to get rid of the stress from the past. And that is exactly what Ziva is designed to do. So that's why I would say start there, because it's not something you have to keep doing. It's not like, oh, well, I have to keep doing state change, state change, state change. It's like once you start to get into a groove of it, it's like every day, twice a day, you're getting rid of this backlog. And then that changes your brain so that you can install the new eating program, so that you can commit to the new exercise program, so that if you do want to stop drinking alcohol, you're not using that to manage your anxiety because the meditation is managing the anxiety. You can get off your sleeping pills because insomnia is a product of stress. And because the meditation will be handling the stress, the sleep gets better. So it's like there's the ripple effect of getting rid of the root cause is so profound that it heals a lot of the things that are causing suffering. And now you have this fancy new brain computer to run whatever software that you want to run. And that includes religion, right? People will say, well, can I meditate and be a Christian? Can I meditate and be a Jew? And it's like, yeah, as a matter of fact, like, you better be, because it's very hard to operate under the guise of any religious software if you are constantly in fight or flight. It's hard to do unto your neighbor as you would have done unto you when you're in fight or flight and looking for an enemy, right? So actually, when we get into these beautiful states of stay and play, it allows us to be more able to act in accordance with these beautiful religious texts as well.
It's so closely tied, I find, I would love to share some of my personal experience too, but it's so closely tied to Maslow's hierarchy because ultimately what everybody's reaching for is self-actualization. How do I become the best human that I can be and be happy and healthy and joyful and do fun shit? And how do we just make this more fun than it is right now? And when we are in fight or flight, even if we're not actually in that state of like we have enough food, water, and shelter, biologically, we're not behaving that way. We're acting as though we've got to fight and we've got to protect ourselves. So it's really hard to get to all the good stuff if what's happening in our nervous system is I have to protect and just try to survive today. So I love that it helps
Yeah.
get people out of that state. And what
Mhm.
it taught me, it really was the catalyst. I started doing Ziva. I saw how it changed my life. I was like, I got to start teaching this stuff. It put me on this path of like, I've got to become certified and learn these different modalities. And it made me want to help give this to the world as well. So truly, truly has been such a gift. And what I've noticed in my time together, I think to what Emily was talking about, it's like so reminds me of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That's like when our brain or body is in fight or flight, it's really damn hard to be the best human we can be. Because we are in a state of like, how do I not trust you? How can I judge you? What are all the things that can go wrong? I've been on this journey of learning the connection between thinking and feeling. I'm far too late to that game, by the way. That's a whole other session. We might
Wait, what do you mean? What's the connection between thinking and feeling?
I met a woman when we did our retreat in Tulum, and I did a site visit there. I met this incredible Mayan healer who's a seventh generation Mayan healer. And I went for a massage. That's what I thought I was getting, but it wasn't. It was an exorcism of the best of ways. And this sweet little Mexican woman who I'm pretty sure is 105 years old, and thank God she's still around
Wow.
doing her work, basically said, "You think your way through your feelings. You have to feel them." And through
Mm.
the practice of what we did, she really helped me release a lot of feelings that I had been stuffing in my stomach. And the body keeps the score, y'all. So if we don't get it out, like Emily's talking about through meditation, it's going to manifest somewhere. It's either going to manifest in self sabotage somewhere along the way. We have bad relationships or bad jobs, and we just keep blaming it on the thing outside of us. But in truth, it's the healing we haven't done that we're carrying around. Or it manifests in, like, oh, My hip hurts. I don't know why. I have stomach issues. It's gonna come out somewhere. And so, to use your phrase, better out than in. You gotta get rid of that
Totally.
shit. And I'm learning that it's okay to feel it. You don't have to, like, get your mind always involved with why it's there. Sometimes you just gotta create a safe space of just like, "Ah, okay. I feel that."
Yeah, thank you so much for bringing this up because I know that like one of your intentions in this show was like people who want to heal
Mm,
but they're not sure
mhm,
where or and honestly like it is so imperative, it is so foundational and yet it's so simple that it's easy to overlook it, but it is this concept that feelings are meant for feeling.
mm,
Feelings are not meant for
mhm,
thinking. Feelings are not meant to be fixed. Feelings are not meant to be repressed. Feelings are meant for feeling. And so if you are sad, what if you got really radical and cried? If you're angry, like what if you get nuts and punch a pillow? If you're scared, like what if you let yourself tremor and shake? And this is actually like a huge foundational element of the new body of work that I'm moving into, which is more embodied manifesting because it's like if we really want to use like our most creative energy available to us to create a world and a life that we would love, we have to first clear the
mhm,
channel. And in order to clear the channel, like we have to feel these feelings. And so I just did a retreat as well in Costa Rica. And we start with something called emotional alchemy. And alchemizing is changing one thing into a different state, but you can't start by trying to change it. You have to start by feeling it and accepting it. And like you said, giving a safe space for it to be expressed. So, these exercises, people are just, we had like a two military folks, a guy who sold a defense contracting company, a CIA person. We had a mother of 10, like not your average, like even meditation retreat folks, and certainly not like this sort of big sacred secret work that I'm moving into. But within 5 minutes, these people were punching pillows and screaming and raging because I would just put on like raging music. I would demonstrate. And then when the container was set of like, go for it, there's these places in New York where they're like demo bars where you take like sledgehammers and you knock down walls. And I just think everyone needs like 15 minutes in one of those demo cages. And that's basically what this is. You play like angry, angry music. You let yourself actually feel it. And then usually what's right underneath that is sadness,
mm,
right? Because that fight or flight is trying to protect you from the pain of actually feeling the sorrow. And then if you cry, everyone's like, oh, I'm going to break down. No, nothing breaks inside of you when you cry. You don't lose it. You don't lose anything except for some toxins out of your eyeballs. And then guess what's right behind it? Bliss chemistry. So if you actually let yourself feel the feelings, then right behind it is this flood of bliss chemistry. And then you can tap into more bliss, more ecstasy, and then you can start to channel that into your dreams.
mm. I think that's a beautiful reminder of, like, so often we wanna intellectualize and change or, like, move through it. "Okay, I have this emotion, what can I do? What's the action I need to take?" Especially for high achievers. I know I keep talking about high achievers, but I feel like, y'all, we're just protecting ourselves by trying to get the next thing that we're never really satisfied with. So it doesn't matter how many more deals you close, it doesn't matter how much more money you make, you're still gonna be chasing and searching for that same feeling that is
Yeah.
fleeting. And so the I love that you're like, beneath, if you get it out. I had a coach say, emotions are meant to be energy in motion. They're meant
Yeah.
to just be like, feel it, sit with it, keep your damn brain out of it because the brain wants to get involved and then create a story and then create somebody who's to blame and hold on to it. Yeah, fix it. And I love that on the other side that you said is the bliss. Do you think that by holding on to that or not acknowledging it by just powering through, do you think we're blocking? Are we blocking bliss when we do that?
1000% you are. Like, now I'm starting to move more into sacred sexuality work, and these people are like, "Well, I don't have the ability to feel that. I can't tap into pleasure. I can't tap into ecstasy." And I'm like, "Yeah, because you spent the last 5 decades trying to numb your pain. Your numbing muscle is extraordinarily skilled, very, very well versed in numbing and repressing and not feeling. And now you're like, "Oh, now body, now I wanna feel full ecstasy." It's like, well, you gotta pay the piper.
Mm,
You're gonna have to do some feeling. We're gonna have to be willing to go in and excavate and clear the channel. But good news, it can happen in minutes. Really, truly, like it can happen in minutes. You're not gonna clear 5 decades of repressed trauma in 5 minutes, but you can start to get to the bliss chemistry. You can start to get to the full ecstasy. You can start to train your body to feel very, very quickly because that's what it's meant to do. It's actually what it's designed to do. And if you think about it, it's a very masculine way of solving something, which this is not neither male nor female. And patriarchy is not like male or female, but there is a very, like, this is heteronormative. But if you think about like a man and a woman get into a fight, the woman gets upset or she's crying or feeling emotion about something, and then the male role is to want to fix it. Well, what's wrong? Let's just solve the
Mhm.
problem. When actually it's not about the problem, it's about the feeling. Like there just needs to be a container held for the feelings to be processed and transmuted. And this is now happening for all of us because we are all swimming in, patriarchy and in sort of like a hyper masculine society, which is like achieve success, accumulate, acquire, hunt. And it's not bad. Those things are not bad. They only become tricky when they get out of
Mhm.
balance. And we've been out of balance for a long time. And now we're starting to see the pendulum move into the more feminine traits, which again is not necessarily female, but the more feminine would be to feel it, to like wrap our arms around it and to surrender to what is, to let the pain be the portal and to not try and fix it, but to actually like surrender to it.
I think there's such, like, generational healing that happens with that too. Our own healing, I think it's so great, and it's not an overestimation to be like, "We can heal the world," which sounds very like Miss America. "What do you want? I wanna"
Oh, you can be Miss America to me all day long. I was Florida's junior miss in 1997 and I am here for it.
Y'all did not see this, but she did a 5-minute face before, and I was, like, so impressed by how quickly I don't even think it was 5 minutes, Emily. I think it was, like, 35 seconds, and she went from, like yeah, I mean, you're always beautiful, but she was, like she went to stage ready, and I'm like, "Can you teach me your ways?" That's another podcast, but anyway, the ripple effect of if we heal our things, we're not passing it along to the next generation. I think it's so fascinating the science that's now catching up to this to being like, "Oh, hey, you know all the trauma that you're carrying? Oh, that can be passed along in utero. You know all the trauma you have in your body? Guess what? It could be your grandma's trauma that was passed to your mother that then was passed to you." And so by doing this work, we are creating generational healing, much less improving the experience we have on this planet, because why not
Yeah.
enjoy the hell out of the time we've got? It is such a
Yeah.
ripple effect of good. And so I say this a little bit soapboxy, but I truly mean it for anybody out there. You're worth the time to give to yourself to heal. You're worth the time in the morning and in the afternoon to sit quietly with yourself. You're worth the
Mhm.
energy, you're worth the effort. All of that is it's so good. It's so good.
And you're right, you are worth it, and for the people that don't believe that yet, the people who are in fight or flight, who are in survival that, like, can't hear that they are worth it yet, then I do think that the generational piece is a good way in. It's like, if you're not gonna do it for you, then, like, will you do it for your children?
Mhm.
Will you do it for your grandchildren? Because even if they've already been born, right, so, like, the epigenetic window has passed, like, those genes have already been passed down, but there is still the energetic and karmic clearing that can happen, which means that this is kind of a little woo woo, but we're starting to again catch up with the science. Like we know that you can inherit at least two, more likely seven generations of trauma, right? So if you think about the Holocaust, if you think about enslaved people in America, if you think about like the Japanese Holocaust, like we are dealing with only like three generations out from that. Okay. So there's real, very intense trauma that is in the cells of human beings, our fellow human beings on the planet right now, that needs attention, that needs care. So, not, let me go towards the positive. We have an opportunity right now because we have access to these tools. We have access to online training. We have access to like you if you wanted to learn meditation 15 years ago, you'd have to like fly to India,
Mhm.
right? Like it wasn't that common. I know that's weird to think, but in New York when I started Ziva, it was just me and some Buddhist temples in New York City. It was not very prevalent. So like 15 years is dramatic. But let's say 50 years ago. Like you'd have to go to India because all the other indigenous cultures had been obliterated. It's like we have an opportunity to heal this. And now we have access to the tools in a more convenient way than humans ever have before. So, good news, we can do this for our children, our children's children, our children's children's children, and seven generations in the future. So, like, that is a really exciting piece of news. So, if you think you're not worth it, then how about seven generations after
Mm.
you? Are they worth it?
That's true legacy. I think many people wanna leave a legacy, and in the here and now, I've talked about this on many podcast episodes, that the science shows our energy expands a minimum of 8 feet from our body. So just
Yeah.
even you getting all of that yuck off of you and you being in a better space, you could heal, you can uplift a room just by walking in without saying anything at all. And even if that sounds woo to you, I guarantee everybody has walked into a room and felt when the energy was shit. And you've also probably
Yeah.
walked into a room and felt like, wow, this is great. The vibe is so good. And it matters today and it matters for hundreds of years to come. That's not an overstatement. I mean, it truly is. The ripple effect of healing is big. And then on the podcast that I was listening to, I was kind of prepping. I'm like, listening, okay, what's Emily Javin with? What's she excited about? By the way, she's got her podcast is launching. So I'm excited for you to share that. Um, but you're talking about this vision of filling a stadium, 80,000 people, collective healing. What's incredible is I've been having these same visions and having these, it's been coming to me of like it could be the conscious collective creating mass healing in cities because we know the effects that Buddhist monks have been able to create going into cities and meditating and creating a ripple effect of decreasing crime simply by that. Think of what could happen if you fill these stadiums. And then I heard you talk about that and I was like, yes, yes. Okay, so what's your vision? What are you feeling? What are you seeing?
Yeah. So this was about maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago. This woman, I was at an event and she could like see people's future. So she asked for permission. She's like, may I? And she put her hands on my knees and she's like, huh, that's weird. And I said, what? And she's like, usually this is my dream. And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, this is usually my dream, but this is clearly you. Like I see you. And it's not just you. There's a whole circle of women around you. And she's like, you're on this stage. It's this black round stage in the middle. And oh, you're in Dallas Cowboy Stadium. There's 80,000 people around you. And that's really all she could see. But what was weird is that I had been having that same vision. Like it had just been coming like it flashes and after a meditation here or there. And then like 2 weeks later, I downloaded the whole run of show of like exactly what happened. So it was like lights up, Lizzo, everyone getting into their body, getting super embodied. And then people doing that work that we were just talking about, that emotional alchemy work of like actually having a space to feel their rage, to feel their sadness, to clear the
Mm.
channel and then inviting people to drop into meditation, to get into coherence with themselves and each other, and then hold a collective vision for the species. Rainforests regenerating, ice caps growing, humans living in symbiosis with the plants and the animals. That people are happy, like happier than we've ever been. Like the gross happiness quotient is higher in each country than it's ever been. People feel safe, people feel generous, people know how to grow their own food, like, whatever version of that lights you up, that we're holding that sort of like heaven on earth utopia dream together. And then we start to build something called creation energy, which is the most creative force that we have in our bodies. And we start to build that. And in these like peak ecstatic, pleasurable states, we would send that energy to the dream. And then, I'm imagining Beyonce comes out and we all have a big party
I
in the
love
middle of the field.
that. Yeah, I'm
Easy,
in. Please let
easy.
me know date, time. I'm in. I'm there. I'll
Great,
I'll bring a bus,
great,
full of other people to come
great.
along for this.
Um, Yeah, I mean, we'll need you to have your own section. It's like each of us is just gonna, like, fill our own section and, like, hold down the fort energetically for each section.
Awesome. Marianne Williamson's there talking about how she's
Yes.
changing the landscape of politics. So much good.
Yes, Glennon Doyle is there, Oprah's there, like, we've got
I love
everybody.
that. I love that. We're speaking that into existence today, feeling that into
Yes.
existence.
Mhm.
Emily, tell us about your podcast that's coming out and how people can continue to just stay in touch with the amazing work that you're doing on the planet.
Thanks. So the podcast is called Why Isn't Everyone Doing This? And I'm so in love with the title and the concept because twice in my life I've had this like ding, 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 ding. Like, why isn't everyone doing this? And the first time it was around meditation, right? A cure my insomnia. I stopped going gray. I didn't get sick for 8.5 years. And I was like, like you, I was like, hear
Yeah.
ye. Like, I found the secret. I found the key. This is the thing you're looking for. And then the next time was a few years ago when I started discovering like nature just started like fire hosing me this PhD in sacred sexuality. And it's like, wait a minute, like, you mean we have the actual like rocket fuel for our manifestations like right inside of us? Well, you mean we have like these extraordinary, like almost psychedelic level powers of love and transmutation right inside of us, and yet we've managed to forget? Like, what? Why isn't everyone tapping into this? How did we manage to let anyone think that this was wrong or dirty or bad or shameful? Like, what? And so I'm on a new soapbox, a little bit more taboo, a little bit more potent medicine. And so this podcast is like a beautiful opportunity to give people access to the amazing parade of masters that nature has given to me to interview them on their level of mastery. So we're talking about everything from psychedelics to voting to composting to sacred sexuality to feeling your feelings to sound healing. So a lot of these things that we're hearing about that are getting more and more popular, but I get to interview like some of my best friends who happen to be world experts in these subjects and speak about both the profundity of the this, why is everyone doing this? And then we also talk about the why. Why did we get divorced from our own divinity? Why did psychedelics become evil and bad and scary? Why did we forget that we could access God right inside of ourselves? And so it's a beautiful combination of a window into very potent tools and then also understanding intellectually and more historically like what has been the lineage of keeping these things from
Mm.
us.
Thank you for sharing your insights and wisdom. I'm a big believer. I'm with you, like the hear ye of whatever it is we want in life, even if we're very achievement or results oriented, our own healing along the way is what helps us get there and have more fun doing
Mhm.
it. So thank you for bringing your genius to the podcast, bringing your genius to the world, and saying yes to this. So grateful.
It's truly my pleasure. I just think you're such a shining light in this world. Your ability to articulate, your ability to take these concepts and translate it into languages that high performers really resonate with is truly a gift. And I'm so grateful to have you in the Ziva family. Oh, and one thing I did want to share with folks is if they're interested in, because we talked a lot about
Yeah.
Ziva. And so we do have a free masterclass. If people want to check that out, it's like more of the science of why this thing helps with anxiety and insomnia and overwhelm. And that is just zivameditation.com/podcast. They can get the free masterclass there.
Before we wrap up this episode, here are my 3 takeaways from Emily and how we can incorporate them into our lives. Number 1, don't be a good deed snatcher. I know that this is also a Des lesson, so if you didn't catch it, go back and listen to the Desiree Garcia episode on This Shit Really Works. But Emily mentioned that she's working to be a better receiver. Me too. And oftentimes we think that receiving is selfish when in truth it is a giving act. And I really loved when we talked about healing. I wanted to be very intentional about bringing that topic to this episode because I think for many of us in the business world, the things that we leave unhealed, we tend to project on those managers who don't see the value in us or within our departments or within our clients. This is unhealed stuff within us that we somehow make someone else's fault. And in truth, we're just seeing in them what we believe to be true deeply within us. And so, an act of healing not only makes us feel better and more peaceful, it makes us better in life all around. And as we talked about, it has major impact when we understand epigenetics and the ripple effect of healing for generations to come. And lastly, it's stress. Stress makes us sick, it makes us stupid, and it slows us down. And not only do we have to try and manage the stress we have today and think of how much stress is around us, even if we don't realize it, the idea that we live in such a fast paced society with so much information all around, we are taking on stress we may not even realize. And having a practice that helps us clear out the current stress, but also get ahead of the curve on this stress gives us a competitive advantage. Competitive advantage for our own health and well being, and a competitive advantage as professionals in the world. Thanks for listening to Conscious Habit, a show from the People Forward Network. If you have questions for me or our guest, or you're looking for more ways to just live or lead more consciously, head over to Facebook. We have a Conscious Habit community there. Let's keep this conversation going. Until next time, do the world a favor and go love yourself.